Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's hearing. We're going to begin today by hearing further evidence from Mr. Jonathan Roome. So would you ask Mr. Roome to come back in, please? Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Roome.
Good morning.
All ready to carry on?
I am, yes, sir.
Good. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Roome. Can I take you back, please, to the slide presentations which were presented by Mr. Roper at the August 2014 launch meeting at CEL 408668, please. And I'd like to go in that slideshow to page 18. You can see that this is a slide which says latest addition to our 5,000 range. And then you see 5 products set out underneath. Celotex FR5000, multi-purpose solution, is the first one there. And then there are 3 others, CG5000, GD5000, GS5000, and then at the bottom, Celotex RS5000, rain screen cladding solution. Did you understand from the slideshow and the presentation that RS5000 was a new product?
That's what I understood, yes.
And as a new product, it was an addition to the existing range.
That's correct.
And therefore an addition and separate from, or a separate product from, FR5000.
Correct.
Did nobody tell you that RS5000 was FR5000 simply rebranded?
Not at that stage, no.
You say not at that stage. Did you come to learn that fact later?
I learnt that much later, yes.
When?
I couldn't tell you.
Was it before or after you left Celotex?
I think it was before, in the latter stages of my time at Celotex.
Right. Was it before or after you tendered your resignation?
It may have been about that same time.
I see. How did you find out?
I must have been told by one of the team, the sales team that I was in.
Right. How did you feel when you found out that, in fact, RS5000 was not a new product, but simply FR5000 rebranded?
I didn't feel anything.
Were you surprised?
I suppose a little bit, yes.
Yeah. From what you could observe from your teammates around you, both during and after the August launch presentation, were they also labouring under the misapprehension that RS5000 was a new product and not simply FR5000 rebranded?
I can't be sure.
You can't be sure. Can I ask you to go to page 32? This is a slide which is called Celotex Rain Screen Cladding Solutions, and you can see that it says below 18 metres RS5000, above 18 metres RS5000. And then in the third bullet point it says incurred substantial development costs. Did Mr. Roper or anybody else at the meeting discuss what the substantial development costs comprised?
No.
Did you have any inkling or idea as to what those were?
No.
Did you know that the development costs for RS5000 comprised the test and classification costs and marketing, but no development costs in the sense of research and development, production?
No,
etc.
I wasn't privy to any information.
What did you think incurred substantial development costs meant?
I don't think I thought about it at the time.
Can we look at page 46? And this is an e-shot slide, a slide which calls itself e-shots, launch email, product spotlight, sent to architects, specifiers, cladding contractors, distribution. And then there's an inner slide, which may need to be blown up a little bit more, but it says Celotex launch above 18-metre board Celotex RS5000. And it says in the text on the right of the balloon, committed to ongoing product development, Celotex has launched Celotex RS5000, specifically designed for rain screen cladding applications, and the latest addition to the 5000 series. Now that description there, specifically designed for rain screen cladding applications and the latest addition to the 5000 range, around 5000 series, was false, wasn't it? In fact.
I mean, looking at this now, that would seem to be so, yes.
Yes. And so did you think, when you saw this slide, that actually RS5000 had been specifically designed and was an addition to the 5000 series?
That's what I was led to believe, yes.
Yeah. Can we then turn back to your relationship with Harley in respect of the Grenfell Tower project, which was where we left off yesterday, and go please to CEL 401451. This is another Salesforce entry, and again, if we can have that blown up, please, so we can see as much of it as possible. We can see, and I'm afraid it is a little bit fuzzy, that the last modified date and time is the 18th of September 2014. It relates to a meeting, and this, I think, is a screenshot. One looks at the whole thing. And if you go a little bit further down, it relates to an activity type called rain screen contractor. And then under last modified date and time, 28th of August 2014. You see that? And then under comments, refurb of Grenfell Tower, you see it says 15 U value. That's probably 0.15 U value. Dan has calculated using FR, but stated that he needs to use RS 5000, 150 millimetres, due on site in October. We'll recalculate using our software instead of Build Desk to make sure everything is in order. Now, I've done my best to read what is not a particularly legible document, but do you think I've got that right, what I read to you?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you recall having a conversation with Dan Anketell-Jones after sending the documents in the zip file that we looked at yesterday?
If that is my record, which I think it is, then I must have done, yes.
Yes. And I've shown you that it says Dan has calculated using FR, but has stated he needs to use RS 5000. And FR there, would that be a reference to FR 5000?
I would have thought so, yes.
Does that record, Dan has calculated using FR, but has stated he needs to use RS 5000, reflect a statement made by Dan Anketell-Jones to you, where he said, I need to use RS 5000?
I would have thought so, yes.
Right. Does that in turn reflect, do you recall, advice that you had given Daniel Anketell-Jones that RS 5000 needed to be used, or did the RS 5000 come from him?
I mean, this would have been after I'd presented or emailed him all of the information on the RS 5000.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And therefore, it looks as if there's a later conversation in which he says he's measured with FR but needs to use RS 5000. So can we take it from that, to the best of your recollection, he's now understood that because Grenfell Tower is above 18 metres, he needs to use RS 5000 instead of FR 5000?
Yes.
Yes. Can you help us as to why it would be that Daniel Anketell-Jones thought that FR 5000 might originally have been appropriate for Grenfell Tower, being a building over 18 metres?
Possibly after reading the literature that I'd previously sent to him.
Right. No, FR, not RS, I meant. Why might he have thought that FR, which was originally specified, might have been appropriate for application at Grenfell Tower, being a building over 18 metres? Can you help with why he might have thought that?
I can't know.
Okay. At this point, though, 28th of August 2014, we know that you'd sent Daniel Anketell-Jones the marketing literature. What was your impression, through your conversations with Dan Anketell-Jones at the end of August 2014, of how alert he was to the fact that RS 5000 could only be used at Grenfell Tower in the same system as tested?
I can't be sure.
Do you think that he understood that?
I couldn't tell you.
You had no impression at all of what was going through his mind from your conversations with him?
No.
Now, it also says in the Salesforce entry, in the last line that I've read to you, that will recalculate using our software. Is that Celotex will recalculate?
I should imagine so, yes.
Right. And the build desk was the software, is this right, that Harley had used for the calculation?
That's correct, yes.
Right. We're going to come back to the Harley calculation later on, but do you remember whether you were sent it at this moment, at this time?
I can't be sure.
Can we go to CEL 5014, please? And I'd like to go to the second email down on that page at 1809. If we can go to the bottom. This is on the 18th of September at 6:02 in the morning. So you're up early, and you write, "Morning, Dan. Please can you let me know your availability to discuss Grenfell Tower and the other projects in your pipeline?" You see that?
I do.
And then again, if you go to the top of the document, there's an email from you on the 17th of November 2014, again to Daniel Anketell-Jones at Harley, copy to Celotex dormant. "Hi Dan, would you be around on Thursday/Friday to catch up regarding your current/future projects?" Jonathan, just pausing on dormant, what was Celotex dormant?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
You don't know? I mean, look, it was an email address you thought fit to use as the copy address. Did you not know what it was?
Unless it's an automated system within Celotex or the email system which pings back a dormant address, I couldn't tell you. It looks like an IT issue.
Right. What I'm really getting at is whether this was an email address where you would send information about potentially dormant customers or dormant projects.
I don't think it means that. I think it's probably an IT issue, I'd have thought.
Right. All right. Now, do you remember having any discussions either in September 2014 or November 2014 to discuss Grenfell Tower and other projects in Harley's pipeline?
I think if there was I can't remember off the top of my head, but if there was a record in the database system, then I would have done. Okay. I would have made a record there.
Right. Do you remember discussing RS 5000 at Grenfell specifically, either in September or in November 2014?
I don't, unless there's a record.
Okay. Now, did you know at the time that at the end of September 2014, RBKC had approved the use of Bond PE55 for the external rain screen material at Grenfell Tower?
I didn't know.
You didn't. Let's go to CEL 6015, please. We can see here an email on the 18th of November 2014. Looks like a diary entry to yourself with an appointment for a meeting on the 24th of November at Harley House in Crowborough, East Sussex. You see that?
I do.
And the subject was a Celotex project review. And then underneath that, it looks what seems to be an email was sent by you. "Hi, Dan," I should say. "Good to speak to you again. Confirmation of our meeting to review current and future projects for potential Celotex specifications." Would I be right in thinking that between the 17th of November email I showed you just a moment ago and you're making this arrangement on the 18th, you had a conversation with Dan Anketell-Jones?
I think I must have done, yes.
Looks like it. And you then set the meeting up on the 24th of November. Can we go to CEL 6018? This is an email from you, Mr. Roome, to Daniel Anketell-Jones on the 24th of November 2014. And it says, "Hi Dan, I spoke with Mark and the team regarding a few projects." And the top one is listed Grenfell Tower. Do you see that?
I do.
And in the second line, it refers to you having seen Mark's drawings. You say, "When we last looked at this, we came to a conclusion of using 3,000 square metres of 150 millimetre RS 5000. Is this still so? Mark's drawings were showing a mix of 100 millimetres and 160 millimetres." Now, you say when we last looked at this. When was that? When did you last look at Grenfell and come to the conclusion about the square meterage for RS 5000 and its thickness?
It must have been at some point prior to this when I would have attended the offices of Harley, but I can't be sure exactly the date.
In the second line, it refers to you having seen Mark's drawings. Whose drawings were those, or what drawings were those?
So that might be Mark Stapley, who was also part of the design team, and he may have brought up an image on his computer to show the areas of insulation.
Did those drawings you saw show the cladding which would be used?
I can't be sure.
Was there any discussion that you had with Harley about the cladding which would be used?
I don't think at that point, no. It was more about the insulation.
Was there any mention at all about the use of or proposed use of ACM cladding panels at Grenfell Tower?
Not that I can recall, no.
Was there any discussion at all about the suitability of RS 5000 with the rain screen system they were proposing, either as the external panels or the whole system?
No.
Did anybody at Harley ask you any questions about RS 5000 in this meeting that you're referring to in this email, or in the previous meeting to which you're referring, or discussion to which you're referring?
Only in so much as the thickness of the insulation.
Right, we'll come back to that. Did you make it clear to them that RS 5000 could not be used on Grenfell Tower unless it was part of the exact same system that had passed the BS 8414 test?
I don't think I did, no.
Why is that?
I think I expected that the team, who were specialists in this arena, had covered the literature that I'd been sending out to them.
Let's go to CEL 602.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Millett. Can I just ask you this? I mean, sometimes even an expert can overlook something or be under a misapprehension. Did it ever occur to you that Mr. Anketell-Jones might have missed something or be under a misapprehension of some kind?
I was never given that sort of impression, no.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Did you have an impression that Mr. Anketell-Jones might have been an expert in some in some way or in some field?
I think from previous meetings with Dan in my previous life at Hilti, where it was more occasion when we were looking at structural fixings, I knew of his sort of knowledge in that arena.
So you knew him as a structural engineer, having expertise in that arena. What about his expertise in relation to facades more generally and fire performance? Specifically?
I didn't question any specific knowledge that he may or may not have had. He was part of a team or a company that specialised in that sort of operation.
Did you know Mr. Anketell-Jones to be, or did you think that he was, a facade engineer or the sort of person who you would equate with a specialist consultant that we'd seen in your February 2015 tier emails? Sorry, slides.
I would have classed him as a knowledgeable person, but I couldn't tell you his background or his education.
No. And did you know that Harley, and indeed the design team around them, such as it was, did not include a specialist facade engineer or fire engineer?
I didn't know.
You didn't know. In those circumstances, why did you not, given that what you didn't know, why did you not think it appropriate just to make absolutely sure that Dan Anketell-Jones had familiarised himself thoroughly with the caveat in all of Celotex's marketing literature when considering the use of RS 5000 for Grenfell Tower?
I can't tell you.
Well, I'm asking you a why question. Do you have an answer to that?
I don't know.
Looking then at the email I wanted to go to, which is CEL 6024, please. This is an email on the 11th of February 2015 from you to Ben Bailey, and there are two emails on page 1, and then an email on page 2. So this is around about the time. Those are the emails we end up with. If we go to page 2 to start with, and go to the bottom of page 2, we see that here is an email from you on the 11th of February 2015, and you say there, "Hi Ben, looking back through my records, it seems that Dan had performed an initial calc using his build desk software, 0.15 U value, 150 millimeters of insulation. He was going to send me the drawings once finished with Trinity back in November. Let me have the final construction drawings showing the different build-ups, and I will get these modelled for you." Now, just looking at that, is it right, as this would suggest, that Daniel Anketell-Jones hadn't sent you the drawings in November or after November, as you were expecting?
I think that's correct, yes.
Yes. And you go on to ask Ben Bailey at Harley's for the final construction drawings showing the different build-ups so you could get those modelled. Would you normally ask for final construction drawings?
I think if there was a query over the performance, it looks like that the insulation and the thickness, there was still an anomaly there from the calculation that Dan had performed.
Why did you ask for the final construction drawings?
Because there's certain components within that penetrate through the insulation that could have changed the way that U value had been calculated, and I wanted to get hold of something that could confirm that, which I could send to the technical team to review.
What did you mean by different build-ups?
Well, basically what was behind or penetrating through the insulation.
Did it not occur to you at that stage that any difference in the build-up, even a build-up behind or penetrating through the insulation, would be different from, or might very well be different from, the build-up forming part of the test back in May 2014?
I didn't know.
Why is that?
I can't tell you.
You did realise at the time, of course, didn't you, that any difference in build-up in the cladding system as a system, which meant that it was different from the system as tested in May 2014, would have meant that it wasn't covered by the BS 8414 test results.
But I did
therefore
know,
couldn't be used above 18 metres.
But I did know there was other routes to compliance based upon that test.
What do you mean by that?
Well, with the Building Control Alliance document, the use of a specialist to take the test as an assessment, an initial assessment, and potentially perform a desktop study, for instance.
Oh, right. So, but at this stage, had you any inkling that Harley were going to obtain a desktop study based on the data derived from the 8414 test?
I didn't know what they were doing, no.
And you didn't have a desktop study, did you?
I didn't, no. The company didn't.
So what route to compliance did you think Harley was pursuing at this point?
I couldn't be sure.
Given that you couldn't be sure, did you not seek to clarify that with Mr. Anketel-Jones?
No, I didn't.
Why is that?
I didn't.
Is it because you wanted to make the sale and left it to him to make the decision as to whether or not RS5000 could safely be used on Grenfell Tower?
I think it must have been the case that I had, as you say, left it to him to make that decision.
And did you perceive that he might be making that decision ignorant of exactly what it was that he could and couldn't do with the results of the 8414 test?
No, I didn't think like that, no.
If you were confident in your mind that he, Mr. Anketel-Jones, had read and understood the caveat within the marketing literature, you wouldn't be discussing different build-ups, would you?
I can't be sure.
Well, the answer must be no.
So could you ask me that question again?
Yes,
please?
I'll try it a different way. If you were confident in your own mind that Mr. Anketel-Jones had read the marketing literature and really understood the caveat in it, and by caveat I mean that you couldn't use RS5000 in any system different from the one which had been tested, then you wouldn't be discussing different build-ups, would you?
Possibly not, no.
No. Can we then look at the next email up in the chain at the foot of page 1, please? This is Ben Bailey back to you on the 11th of February 2015. Hi, Jonathan. The drawings are in a Dropbox. Does this link work for you? You see that?
I do.
And you say in your witness statement, let's just go to that, because you cover this point, that you identified 2 drawings as being particularly relevant. I can show you that. It's page 22 of your statement at paragraph 74. And in fact, at 73, you refer to the Dropbox. And at 74, you say you identify 2 drawings of particular relevance. You see that? And can I just ask you how you identified those drawings as particular relevance?
I think from just looking through a few, the first few that I'd found that showed an indicative use of the insulation and the build-up behind it.
Let's look at those 2 drawings that you say were of particular relevance. You've identified those in the sentence about halfway down paragraph 73, where you say, I identified 2 relevant drawings, which I exhibit as JWRR35C 00456 and JWRR36C 00457. Now, we've got those at CEL 50456 and CEL 50457. We can probably get them both on the screen at the same time if we can, and if we can't, we'll look at them sequentially. CEL 50456 and 457. Yes, thank you very much. Now, looking at those, why did you consider these drawings to be of a special relevance?
Just because they showed the insulation and the build-up and something that I could send on to the technical team to review for me.
In order to identify these particular drawings, does it follow that you must have opened the Dropbox that Ben Bailey had sent you?
I did, yes.
You did. And looked at all of the drawings in it, yes?
I don't think I looked at all of them, no, just the first few, and as soon as I found 1 or 2 that were relevant, then I could get them sent across.
Right. Now, although neither of these two drawings show the cladding material specifically, Harley have been able to identify exactly what the drawings were in the Dropbox. But Ben Bailey has said that Harley kept current drawings in a Dropbox and may simply have sent that link to you rather than selecting any particular drawings. That was his evidence, and I'll just give the reference for the transcript. Day 35, page 86 at line 21 to 87 at line 3. That's for our benefit. Do you recall having to sift through a mass of drawings to find what you were looking for in order to answer Ben Bailey's question about the U values?
I knew there was a lot of drawings there, or a lot of files there, I should say, and I just picked the first two that I thought were relevant.
I see. When you say you picked the first two, out of a file description or visually looking at the drawings?
I think I just clicked on them one by one until I found one or two, as it were, that looked relevant.
Right, and just to be very clear, what were you looking for?
Well, anything that showed the squiggly line, basically, which denotes insulation, and the dimensions that you could see along the right-hand side of each of the images.
Yes, I see. Thank you. Now, just looking at those drawings, can you see that there is a rain screen?
I can, yes.
Yeah. And can you look at it closely? Because if you do, you see that it's got an outer skin and an inner core, doesn't it? If you look at, for example, the left-hand drawing, there's a rain screen with a thick black outer coating and an inner core, which is the same as on the right-hand drawing. Do you see that? Do you see that there's an outer skin and an inner core?
I can see some lines denoting some sort of panel, yes.
Yes. Was it not clear to you at the time that the cladding on these drawings proposed for Grenfell Tower, whatever it was, wasn't cementitious fibreboard?
I didn't make that comparison, no.
Right. Did it not occur to you that Harley had failed to understand the caveat in the literature about the cladding system needing to be the same as the 8414 test, looking at these drawings?
No.
Look at CEL 5029, please. 6029, please. CEL 6029. And I'd like to look at the second email down on that page. This is an email from you back to Ben Bailey the same day, 11th of February 2015. And you sent him some calculations you'd received from your technical department. You see that? And he then responds to you. Perhaps I should just dwell on it a little bit more. You say, looking at the 150 millimetre concrete as a base, you would need 200 millimetres of Celotex RS 5000 to meet U value at 15. If you're using a build-up of 160 millimetres RS 5000 as drawn, you will need a U value of 18. Are there any further layers internally attached to the 150 millimetre concrete panels that Dan calculated? If so, this will have an impact on the calcs. So that's your email to him, and he responds to you 8 minutes later. You see that at the top of the page. We think the concrete is 150 millimetres thickness with 100 millimetres concrete and flint stone composition. Dan's latest calcs attached. Will this make any difference? Now let's look at those calculations, because you can see from the attachments that he attached some images, 3 of them. CEL 6030. Now, this is the build desk calculation carried out by Daniel Anquetil Jones. Can you see that?
I can, yes.
And it shows at the top line of the text under the diagram that the cladding would be an ACM cladding panel. You see that?
I can see that now, yes.
Yes, it's item number 1. And under manufacturer, it says own catalogue, and under name, it says ACM cladding panel. Did you realise from this that ACM was going to be used as the cladding panel at Grenfell Tower?
I can't say I did, no.
Well, these documents clearly show that it would, don't they?
On reflection, they do, yes.
So, but you didn't pick that up, is that right?
I didn't, no.
So does it follow that you didn't point this out to Ben Bailey?
I didn't, no.
had you noticed that the cladding panel was going to be ACM, would you have done?
I would have done, yes.
Yeah. So, on your evidence, you didn't because you didn't spot that the cladding panel was going to be ACM.
That's correct, yes.
Was it not an important thing for you to do to make sure that in the build-up was exactly the same as that which had been tested?
On reflection now, with hindsight, yes, but not at the time.
And again, can I suggest to you that the reason you didn't go back to him was because you would rather make the sale and leave it to him to work out whether or not the addition of ACM cladding panels meant that the caveat was caught or not?
No, that wouldn't be the case, no.
Now, can I just show you what Ray Bailey says in his evidence? Can I show you day 33, page 27, please? And I'd like to go to line 18. And this is in response to a question I asked him about which route to compliance for limited combustibility did you think was being followed on the Grenfell Tower project. And his answer was, at line 18, I thought we were covered in two ways. And I thought our thoughts were that the material was of limited combustibility, and if that's incorrect, we accept that. In addition, there was a BS 8414 test, so it was a material that had a whole series of tests. It was a fantastic product. On the certificate, we saw that it said it had been tested with different facing material. We sent our details to Celotex to get them to sign off that it was safe. So I suppose we're saying we believe that Celotex had carried out a study on it. And then he's asked the question, you say we sent our details to Celotex to get them to sign off that it was safe. Answer, yes. And then he qualifies that at line 7. He says that was a poor choice of words, to confirm that it was that they were happy for us to use it in that situation. And then at line 15, he says, yeah, we wanted Celotex's confirmation that they were happy for us to use it. Question, line 17, was it not up to Harley to satisfy itself that it was safe to use by making the appropriate investigations? Answer at 19, well, we made the investigations with the manufacturer. And then if you go on, he goes on to say at the bottom, the product was specified by Studio E, Exova were, and over the page, their fire consultant, etc., etc. And then at line 3, he says, we were doing our own backup check to stuff that had already been signed off by them. So we did our own checks and took all proper and necessary means, in our view, to confirm that what they had specified for us was correct. Now, was it your understanding, Mr. Roome, that you were being asked by Harley to comment on the compliance of the rain screen system to be used at Grenfell Tower?
No.
Or to advise on whether RS 5000 was safe for Grenfell Tower from a fire safety perspective?
No.
And did you not realise at this point or by this point that Harley were going to be using RS 5000 above 18 metres in a system which was different from the system test?
I wasn't, no.
Now let's look back at your email of the 11th of February to which Ben Bailey was responding at CEL 6025, please. And you can see there that you say, looking at the 150 millimetre concrete as a base, you would need 200 millimetres of Celotex RS 5000 to meet U value of 15. Is it right that at this stage, the specific width, or depth, if you like, of the Celotex product was still under consideration?
It looks to be the case, yes.
Now, there were various attachments to this email, and I just want to look at one or two with you. But before I do that, can we just look back at the product data sheet? CEL 407961, please. And I want to go to page 3, which is its last page. You'll recall, Mr. Roome, we looked at this yesterday. This is the shortest of the marketing documents, which has the pink banner on every page, which says suitable for buildings above 18 metres in height. We looked at that yesterday. And this is the last page. If we can go to the last page, it says, under certification, and the system tested, and it lists the insulation, if you see that as the third item down, 100 millimetres Celotex RS 5000. Now, as we've discussed before, it then goes on underneath the list of components to say the fire performance and classification report issued only relates to the components detailed above. Any changes to the components listed will need to be considered by the building designer. Did you realise that as soon as you started discussing depths of Celotex other than 100 millimetres, they fell outside the system that had been tested?
I didn't know.
How could you possibly not have noticed that?
Because I read that the components included the material. It wasn't a reference to the thickness. That's the way I understood it.
I don't understand that answer, with great respect, because surely the thicker the material, the more Celotex you put into a system, the more the combustible material you're adding to the system.
It's something I learnt later, that's how it was interpreted.
Well, did you realise there was no valid BR135 classification in place justifying the use of any thickness of Celotex RS 5000 other than 100 millimetres?
I didn't know.
Do you accept that, given that you were discussing a depth of Celotex greater than 100 millimetres, that meant that you were discussing a rain screen cladding system which would involve a much greater quantity of combustible material being used without any valid approval in place?
I do now, yes.
You didn't then?
I didn't know.
And was your logic that you thought that it related to the components, so you could use any amount of any of this material?
That's correct.
And that it would pass, or it would be covered by the test?
Yes.
I have to put to you that that is not a credible line of thinking, and that you can't have thought that at the time.
Well, that's the way I did, unfortunately.
Did you not ask yourself why Harley thought that it was all right to use 150 or 160 millimetres of Celotex RS 5000 as opposed to the 100 millimetres of Celotex RS 5000, the subject of the test and the caveat?
I don't know.
The 11th of February 2015 was the same day as we see that you sent your traffic light coloured 3 tiers slides to Ms. Berger, wasn't it? It was a busy day for you. Did you not, in your working day on that day, put 2 and 2 together and work out in your own mind that Harley was a green?
I didn't know.
You really didn't?
No.
You see, they had clear ignorance of the requirements and they had no specialist consultant helping them. You really didn't think that these were a green for go, use, as in accordance with your Tier 3?
No, because I had no reason to know that they didn't have any speciality consultancy behind them or fire consultant.
Can we look at CEL 6027? Now, this is a Celotex U value calculation that I think you carried out on the 11th of February 2015, isn't it?
It's not something that I could carry out. It's something that the technical team would carry out. So
I see.
I'd sent the correspondence from that I received from Ben Bailey to the Celotex technical team to run the calculation.
I follow. And you got the result back on the 11th of February, and you were their client, effectively. Is that the way that worked?
I think that's the way that it is recorded within their system, yes.
I see. So although you're Celotex, you are effectively the technical team's client.
As it were, yes.
As it were. Yes, absolutely. Right. Let's just look down. It contains a number of statements. And I'm going to look at the paragraphs of text just underneath the columns of figures. And you can see that Celotex RS5000 is referred to there. There's nothing in there for rain screen cladding, if you look at the second item in that column.
Yeah.
So they've allowed naught for thermal resistance. But then it goes on in the text to say this calculation is for the purposes of demonstrating the thermal transmittance U value through the modelled construction. It should not be construed as demonstrating compliance with other areas of the building regulations, such as approved document B, fire. It is critical that all areas of design are agreed with the relevant building control body before being finalised. For buildings with a storey height above 18 metres, please refer to our rain screen cladding compliance guide, which is available from Celotex or from the Celotex Technical Centre. And then you've got the U value of 15 underneath that. Now, I just want to highlight the words, it should not be construed as demonstrating compliance with other areas of the building regulations, such as approved document B, fire. Do you know why this document mentions approved document B specifically?
I don't know.
Is it standard wording on a Celotex U-value calculation?
It could possibly be, yes.
Had you discussed approved document B with Mr. Bailey?
I hadn't, no.
Or with Dan Anketel-Jones?
No, I don't think so.
In relation to the use above 18 metres, why were you offering U-value calculations for Grenfell Tower unless you were confident that the build-up was compliant with approved document B?
I think the only thing that we were doing was validating the calculations that Dan had performed to achieve 0.15 U value based upon his build desk calculation.
Was it common practice for Celotex to carry out U-value calculations without knowing what the cladding material would be?
I couldn't tell you.
Well, had you come across it in your own work for Celotex at or by this time?
I can't be certain.
Was it common practice to carry out U-valuations without knowing that the cladding system into which the insulation material was going to be installed above 18 metres was exactly the same as that tested under the BS 8414 test?
I can't be sure.
Was there not an obvious risk in pursuing an approach like that?
Looking back with hindsight, yes, possibly.
And the risk didn't occur to you at the time?
It didn't, no.
Even though you were privy to all the material that had come from the technical department and the marketing literature and the details about the test?
No.
Can we look at CEL 6028, please? This is another calculation, also attached to the email of the 11th of February that you sent to Ben Bailey, we've just seen. And this is the calculation showing that 160 millimetres of RS5000 would result in a U value of 18. I'm summarising the effect of the document, but do you agree that that is what it says, effectively?
Correct.
Now, this document doesn't have the disclaimers that we've seen on the previous example that we were looking at. Why is that?
I couldn't tell you.
And given that 160 millimetres was not as tested, why, again, not tell Ben Bailey that 160 millimetres wasn't what was tested and it shouldn't be even considered?
I can't tell you.
For the same reason as before?
Yes.
Were calculations such as this without disclaimers about ADB often sent out, in your experience as it stood at the time?
I can't recall.
Can we look at CEL 6031, please? And this is your email of the 15th of February Right, we need to go lower down the string to page 5, please, and then up to page 4. This is your email to Ben Bailey, and it starts at the foot of page 4. Thank you. On the 12th of February 2015. Hi, Ben. And if we go over to page 5, we can see the text. You say, I've spoken to our technical team, and they've pointed out that Dan had failed to take into account the negative impact of the helping hand brackets cold bridging the insulation. This is why the build desk data is showing favourable U-value results. I will leave it to you to decide which thickness of RS5000 you will need to achieve your desired U-value. Would you agree that you were effectively advising that you couldn't get a U-value of 15 with 160 millimetres of RS5000?
The two calculations that I'd sent back from our technical team were a model representation of the different thicknesses and the resultant U-values. So the technical team were basically telling me that what Dan had modelled could not be achieved, apparently.
And then if we go on to CEL 6031 at page 4, so back a page, we see Ben Bailey's response. And I'm afraid we probably have to go, it's quite small, it may have to be blown up. And this is a month later on the 13th of March. Ben Bailey writes to you and says, hi, Jonathan. Can you see that? It's in a massive text there.
I can, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Jonathan. I'm getting to the stage now of ordering the insulation. The calcs Dan did before with 160 millimetres of insulation to get a U value of 15 may be correct after all, as the cladding supports don't break through the insulation. Would Celotex be able to offer sheets in 160 millimetre thickness to reduce the amount of cutting on site? Did you check that? Did you check the calculations again?
I don't think any further calculations were ever carried out, no.
Again, why didn't you draw to their attention the fact that if they were going to use 160 millimetres, as you now clearly knew they were going to, of RS5000, that would be different from the system tested, which only used 100?
I didn't think that was an issue.
And presumably you thought that Daniel Anketel-Jones didn't think it was an issue either, is that right?
Correct.
I'd like to turn to the topic of case studies. You'll recall that we had a discussion about that, I think, yesterday. Can we go on then to CEL 6039? This is a meeting reminder to yourself, I think, for a meeting on the 7th of May 2015 with Ben Bailey. And it says, meeting with Ben Bailey to review installation of RS on Grenfell Tower, potential case study. First, what did you mean by review installation?
I think this was just to fact-find the details of the project for one of the one-page A4 flyers that were produced by Celotex.
Were those the flyers that we talked about yesterday? You'd have a case study to send to potential customers to show potential customers what actual projects you'd used RS5000 on?
Correct, yes.
And you say potential case study. Was that because you viewed Grenfell Tower as a potential for such a case study that you've just described?
Yes.
Can we look at CEL 1443? CEL 401443, please. And this is a Salesforce entry, which looks like it relates to a meeting between Ben Bailey and you, I think, would that be right, in the office to discuss progress on Grenfell Tower?
It seems to be, yes.
Now, the due date there is 8th of April 2015, and that looks like all the same as all the other dates in the document. Was there a meeting on the 8th of April 2015?
I think if I'd written that up, then that's likely, yes.
So that would have predated your Outlook diary entry of the 17th of April for a meeting on the 7th of May, wouldn't it?
It would have done, yes.
Yeah, I see. Now, we can see that it records, met Ben in the office to discuss progress on Grenfell Tower. Rydens are the MC, main contractor, and although they have started to take RS, they have not actually started installing. Discuss the potential to use as a case study, and Ben is happy, thinks that Rydens will get on board also. Arrange to visit site the next time in area. Now, you can see that it refers to discussing a potential case study of Grenfell Tower. First, is this an accurate note of your discussion with Ben Bailey?
If I wrote it, then that's correct, yes.
And secondly, when you proposed that Grenfell Tower should be a case study there, what exactly were you proposing to study?
Well, like the other sort of A4 flyers, it was literally just a synopsis of the product and the project.
And what did you, at that stage, intend the synopsis of the project would say?
It was prescriptive, so whatever the layout had been on the case study documents, those flyers, it would have been followed.
Were you proposing to use it being Grenfell Tower, as a case study example of an 18-metre plus building where RS 5000 had been used with a system different from the BS 8414 test?
I think it was just a case study of an 18-metre building with RS 5000. I didn't reflect on the choice that it was a different build-up, as you say.
If it hadn't shown what build-up had been used in the rain screen cladding, why would it have been any use to a potential customer, considering the use of RS 5000?
I don't know.
Well, it wouldn't have been, would it? Because any potential customer would ask you as their first question, what's the rain screen?
Possibly, yes.
So without knowing precisely what the rain screen was, the case study would have been all but useless.
Potentially.
Did you ask Ben Bailey at this stage, this is early April 2015, what the rain screen was?
I didn't know.
If you didn't ask that question, how could you have put forward a sensible and intelligible and useful case study?
I don't know. I didn't think about it.
Let's look at Ben Bailey's evidence about this. This is at day 39, page 93, please. He was asked at page 93, line 12, what did you understand that Grenfell Tower being a case study for RS 5000 would involve, or what did it mean? Answer, I suppose being an insulation supplier, they might be interested in what U-value was achieved with their product on a building. Question, did you get the impression that Grenfell Tower was, as it were, a guinea pig for RS 5000? Answer, that's not a thought that crossed my mind. Why would Celotex need a case study of how RS 5000 performed from a thermal point of view?
It's one of the criteria within the flyers that they would put down.
But it wouldn't be a case study of actual performance, would it? Because these boards were only just going to go onto the building.
Sorry, could you elaborate?
Well, it wouldn't be a case study which simply identified what the thermal value was, would say no more than the marketing literature, would it?
Well, that's generally what these documents were.
Yes, but a potential customer would know what the thermal values were for RS 5000 and wouldn't need to look at a case study for that.
Potentially, but not always. I suppose they would have to, it would give them an indication of the thermal performance of a particular thickness of material. Anything other than that, they would need to go to the technical team to get a specific calculation done to give an indication.
Was the reality that Grenfell Tower was a potential case study in the sense that you've expressed it, because Grenfell Tower was one of the first major projects where RS 5000 was being used in a building over 18 metres.
Yes.
And indeed, as at the 8th of April 2015, I should ask you, were there any other projects involving buildings over 18 metres for which you had sold RS 5000?
I can't say for others within the team or teams in the UK.
All right, what about you?
Not for me personally, no.
So this was your first?
I think so, yes.
Is there a sense in which Grenfell Tower was being used as a guinea pig, an experiment for RS 5000?
I didn't see it that way, no.
Can we go to CEL 50558, please? This is an email of the 9th of April 2015 to the Salesforce team from you regarding a draft template for Grenfell Tower. Case study template for Grenfell Tower is the subject line. Did you draft this text?
This is a sort of prescribed document which the information was put against the bold text there. So I was literally just filling in components that I was being asked for from that document.
So this is a draft template case study going the rounds, was it, in Celotex at the time?
This is a sort of a standard document, yes.
And we can see if we go to page 1 at the bottom, it says, what application was Celotex used in? And you just put rain screen. I suppose that's a pithy way of describing it, but wouldn't it be obvious to anybody that RS 5000 was going to be used in rain screen, given that RS stood for rain screen?
No, not necessarily. These types of documents often said the application quite simplistically like that, and then the product that was used in that application.
Right. I see. And if you go 5 bullet points down, you can see there's a question, why Celotex was used. See that?
Correct, yes.
And it says performance and value. Would that include fire performance, or would it only include thermal performance?
I think the idea there is thermal performance.
Now, let's look at CEL 50566. This is a fuller version of the Celotex case study for Grenfell Tower, which I think was sent, is this right, to Celotex by the CFA group. Do you remember the CFA group?
I can't recall seeing this document.
Right.
No.
Okay, let's see if we can do a bit better. Can we go to CEL 50564, please? This is an email from somebody called Kelly Slochak to Daniel Steed, dated the 5th of June 2015. And she says, "Hi, Dan. Please see attached 2 times case studies for your approval so far. Just waiting on quotes as usual. I look forward to hearing your thoughts." Did you see this email or the attachment at the time?
No, I didn't.
Was the production of case studies normally outsourced to Kelly Slochak or the CFA group?
I can't be sure. That would have been dealt with by the marketing product management team.
Going back to the document, if we can, it's at CEL 50566, please. Were you involved in producing the text in this document?
No, I wasn't.
were you familiar with this kind of document, this detailed case study?
No, I wasn't.
Right. Do you know who was?
I can only think it would have been the marketing and product management team.
Right. And which particular individuals within that team would have been responsible for this document?
I can't be certain.
This is more than a flyer, isn't it? This is a detailed document.
It has more in it than, yes, my simple document that I completed.
Right. Did you know at the time that in addition to your simple document that you completed that we've just seen, Celotex was sending out more detailed case studies to potential customers, such as this?
No, I didn't.
You didn't? Right. Can you give me the name of the person who would have been responsible for this document, to the best of your recollection?
If you go back to the email that this is attached to,
Daniel Steed.
It's Daniel Steed, then he may have been the person as part of the marketing team who was tasked with this role.
Right, and who was Daniel Steed's line manager?
Can you refer back to my organogram again?
Yes, certainly.
Please.
CEL 30122298, please.
So the second column there,
Okay, we can see him on the left-hand side, immediately underneath Lizzie Seaton. So she answers to Ben Hartle. Is it Ben?
it's Bex, Becky.
Bex Hartle. Bex. That's right. Bex
B-E-X,
Hartle. Quite
yeah.
right. Bex Hartlebury, who answers to Paul Evans. I see. So in the end, this is Paul Evans' responsibility, is it? This document.
That's correct.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Can we then go to CEL 6041, please? This is another meeting reminder in your Outlook diary for a meeting on the 20th of May 2015 with Harley on the subject of Grenfell Tower, and indeed at the site. And the subject is meeting with Ben Bailey to review progress and or forward order schedule, Ryden's main contractor. And that meeting took place, I think, didn't it?
No, it didn't. I think that the two times I attempted to meet with Ben on site, he was unavailable.
I see. Can we go back to CEL 401444, please? I say back to. I don't think, in fact, I've shown you this document. But if you look at it, it is the Salesforce entry, and there's a due date there of the 20th of May 2015 relating to Grenfell Tower, and the name on the right-hand side is Mark Harris. And you can see that it says, comments, products starting to be installed. Mark wanted to know if we could offer any letter detailing that Harley are an improved installer of Celotex products. Reason being that he has been asked by the MC, Rydens, who in turn have been asked by Kensington and Chelsea Council as they wish to apply for drawing down money from an eco fund. Emailed John, is that John O?
That's correct, yes.
Is that John Roper?
No, that's Richard John, who is a business development manager.
Right, and Paul Evans to explore options, and we'll feed back to Mark. Did you actually in the end offer Harley any letter to the effect that they were an approved installer?
I didn't, no.
Was there a meeting on site at Grenfell Tower at this time?
No, I think it's likely that as you see, the task topic, it says site visit there.
Yes.
It's likely, being that it was a conversation with Mark Harris, it's more likely that this was, I'd sort of fixed the meeting record in the database, and I just hadn't updated the task topic to something like phone call.
Right. So you didn't have a site visit,
No, I didn't.
despite this document?
That's correct, yes.
Right. Can we then turn to a different topic? And Mr. Chairman, this topic will probably take about 10 minutes, but I can make decent progress on it if I get through it.
Yes,
before
all right.
I-
Well, if you'd like to start, that'll be right.
Thank you. The topic is the promotion of RS 5000 for Grenfell Tower. Now, I think, given everything we've looked at so far, Mr. Roome, it's right to say, isn't it, that Celotex, through you, was seeking to promote RS 5000 for use on Grenfell Tower.
That's correct.
Yes. Could we look at CEL 6031, please? And I'd like to go to page 2 in that email run. And this is an email from you to Ben Bailey on the 16th of March 2015 at 9:42 in the morning. And it says, re Grenfell Tower, Celotex. Hi Ben, as this would be a special order, do you need exactly 1,900 square metres, or would you need to be more to be safe? Mindful that we would have to produce in one complete run. Please let me know, and I will speak to our factory about lead times. And then you say, please can you also let me know who you would be buying this through, and I will arrange a list price for the distributors involved so you can get the best competitive price, brackets. Were you offering to arrange the best competitive price, as you put it, to seek to clinch a deal for the use of RS 5000 at Grenfell Tower?
I think it was just a phrase I'd used, but it just meant that I would be able to get the pricing sorted out for him, really.
Right. In order to clinch the deal?
Well, I think the deal was already there. Harley had already made the decision to purchase the material.
I see. But as a special favour, then, to a customer who'd shown willing and bought the product?
No favour given, no.
Why did you tell him that you were going to arrange a list price for the distributors so that Harley could get the best, most competitive price, or competitive price? Why did you do that?
I suppose it's just a phrase I used to say that, you know, if we'd spoken to the distributor beforehand, then they would be more aware of the quantity, and the company would therefore give them the appropriate discount.
Why did you want Harley to get the best price?
Well, just to give them any price, to be honest.
Well, to get any price, you wouldn't have had to have gone through the trouble of arranging a list price for the distributors in order to produce the best, brackets, competitive price, as your email states.
Well, the company, I think, with some of these types of products, they didn't necessarily have a list price as such.
And this was going to be a bespoke product, wasn't it?
I think a bespoke size.
Well, all right.
That was the thing. So if it was a non-standard size, which I think that this is what they were going to have to produce, they would need an appropriate list price and discount.
I see. So by list price, you had to arrange a specific price for the distributors for this thickness because they didn't have one.
I think that was the case, yes.
I follow. And why would that result in Harley getting the best price?
I think it was just a term that I'd used.
Well, I know. I just want to know why you used it.
I can't be sure, unfortunately.
Okay. Can we then look up this email string to page 1, please, which is a little bit later on that day. And you're told by Ben Bailey, and I've skipped over it, that they were using SIG as their distributor. And you say to Ben Bailey on the 16th of March, perfect, the 80 millimetres are a standard size, so it should be easy enough to get hold of. And then you say, do you know which SIG branch that you're using and who you speak to? It will then be easier for me to make sure that the pricing and supply chain is looked after for you. What do you mean by looked after?
Well, I think it was just because if we knew which, or Celotex knew which SIG branch was being used, then they could be in contact with them directly to make sure that sort of process, the supply chain process, went more smoothly.
And then at the top of the page, we could see Ben Bailey comes back to you and says, we've been speaking to a lady called Jill Walker at the Maidstone branch. You see that? And we can see then the next document, CEL 6032. Jill Walker sends an email essentially to herself and then to you on the 17th of March, as promised, with a quotation for RS, and she's got RS 5160 for Holly Curtain Wall. If we, we'll look at the actual quotation in a moment, but was it common practice for third-party distributors such as SIG to send you, Celotex, the quote that they were providing to their customer?
I can't be sure, no.
So you can't be sure. I mean, is that a no or a don't know?
For me personally, no.
No.
But I can't say for others.
No. Do you know why she did so on this occasion?
I think it may be because I'd asked to be, kept up to speed about the project. So she was just reciprocating an email to me.
Let's look at the actual quotation. CEL 6035, please. This is a formal SIG quotation to Harley, as you can see, dated the 17th of March 2015, for the attention of Ben Bailey. And it says, Dear Sirs, and then 10 Grenfell Tower, WLL, RS 5160. Just help me with RS 5160. Is that a mistake, or
No.
is that something?
So the nomenclature there would be the RS5 as in 5,000, and then the 160 refers to the thickness.
I follow. And then it says supply and delivery only. Product, Celotex RS 5000 specials, quantity 660 each, price £132.19p per each, discount minus 47.50%, with a total price of £45,803.84p. Did you arrange or authorise that discount?
No, that's a discount that is between the SIG branch, the distributor, and their customer. So we would not have any input into that.
You could nonetheless see that it was happening, could you?
I can see what it is, yes.
Did the discount that SIG was offering affect the amount that SIG would account to you for, or buy from you for?
I couldn't say. I mean, it's with construction materials generally, discounts are given. And even as far back as when I had a tenure with General Electric, we offered discounts as high as 80, 90% on some products. It just really depends on the net price and the list price, really. The higher the list price, the more scope or tweaking of, I suppose, the discounts, really.
Right. You say we would not have any input into that. Can we just look at CEL 50463, please? Which is an email run on the 16th of March, the day before. And I'd like to start at the bottom of page 2. And it runs over to page 3. But let's start at the bottom of page 2. This is an email from you to Claire Terry on the 16th of March. Morning, Claire, hope you had a lovely weekend, etc. And then at the bottom it says, please can you let me know if we can do the following for Harley? And then over the page, please, to page 3. Top of page 3. Manufacture of 160 millimetre special RS 5000, 1900 square metres. List price for the distributor. Lead time. I will then get the order through the distributor and confirm. And if we scroll up to page 1, we can see that Paul Evans sets out the same day, hi Claire, list price of 45 £12.90 per square metre, less standard terms, minimum order of 600 square metres and 10 to 15 day working day lead time. So just looking at that Paul Evans set the terms, didn't he?
That was common practice, yes. So Claire Terry worked in the customer services team, and they would be dealing with sort of deliveries to distributors and pricing. And if there was something, a price that was needed, or list price, for instance, for something that's non-standard, then it would be her job to go back to the head of product management or part of the commercial team to set that price.
Is the correct sequence here that you asked Ben Bailey who their distributor was, he told you it was SIG, you then asked Claire Terry, who is SIG, internally what could be done by way of offering list price?
No, sorry, Claire Terry was in the Celotex customer services team. So it's Jill Walker who was at SIG.
Jill Walker was at SIG, I see. Claire Terry was Celotex as well, was she?
In the customer services
Customer
team.
services team, I follow. And Mr. Evans, Paul Evans, authorised the price, and you then relayed that to SIG.
I think Claire may have done that because she had that direct connection with SIG. That was her role.
How would SIG make any profit if it was going to offer a discount of 47 odd %?
I can't tell you. I don't know what their terms are. I don't know what their discounts from Celotex would be. That would be part of the commercial team.
Was the practice of offering substantial discounts off list price one which Celotex adopted for marketing RS5000?
Not that I know of, no.
Now, in the end, we know that Harley didn't actually order this run. Instead, it used 80 millimetres doubled up, didn't it?
I think that's correct, yes.
Let's look at SIG 6022, please. This is the first invoice for the RS5080, which I think, as you explained, is RS5000 with depths of 80 millimetres. And this is a SIG invoice to Harley, 1st of April 2015, where we see the order for that, 80 millimetres times 1200 millimetres times 2400 millimetres, and the price there. You see that?
I do.
Of 23.37, which again represents a discount of 47.5%. Now, we don't think this was sent to you, but we can see that the same discount was applied as I've shown you. Did you arrange that discount, or was that solely something that SIG was offering?
This is the terms that Harley would have had with the distributor, which is SIG. So that is solely what they offered to Harley.
Right. So I think what you're telling us is that the discount arrangements were nothing to do with Celotex. That was purely a matter as between SIG, your distributor, and Harley as the end customer.
That's correct.
Right. Mr. Chairman, I think that's an appropriate moment for a break. Yes.
Yes, right. Mr. Roome, we'll have a short break at this point.
Okay.
We'll come back at 20 to 12, please. And no talking about your evidence,
Of course.
please, while you're out of the room.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to go to the usher, please. Good. 20 to 12, please. Thank you. Would you ask Mr. Roome to come back in, please? Thank you. Right, Mr. Roome, ready to carry on, I think.
Yes, thank you.
Good, thank you. Yes, Mr. Billett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Roome, can I ask you to go to your witness statement, please, at page 21? And I'd like to look with you, please, at paragraphs 69, 70 and 71, which is about an email you got from Daniel Anketel-Jones on the 16th of January 2015. I'll show you the email in a moment. You say, on the 16th of January 2015, I received an email from Daniel Anketel-Jones regarding RS 5000, which you exhibit. It does not mention Grenfell Tower, and I do not know or recall who the clients referred to were. Daniel Anketel-Jones' email states, we've been asked by one of our clients to see the test results and certificates for the RS 5000 installation. They want to know exactly how it was installed, when it was tested to BS 8414, Part 2, 2005, who carried out the testing, how it was fixed, what it was covered with, what cladding was used, what support structure, etc. And most importantly, the results. Drawings or photos of the test setup would help show how it was installed, but I imagine these form part of the test results anyway. And then if we can go over the page, please, to page 22, you continue. They also want to see the certificates and results for the test to BS 476 Part 7, fire class rating, showing the index rating achieved during the test. Could you sort this out for us, please? And then you say, I forwarded this request on to Jamie Hayes, Celotex's Technical Services Team Leader. Now, I've shown you that because I want to show you the actual email, which is at CEL 6019 at page 2. Now, we can see the email at the foot of, or halfway down that page, and your response to him just above it. But he starts by saying, good morning, John. Sorry, but got a headache for you. Now, as you'll have seen from the quotation that you put in your witness statement, you omitted that part of the email which said, sorry, but got a headache for you. Why was that?
I don't know.
Did you agree in your own mind at the time that the question that he then asked you was a headache?
Not particularly, no. He's just asking for some documents.
Did you ask yourself why Daniel Anketel-Jones might have thought that the request he was making of you would be a headache for you?
No, I can't think why.
Was it a headache because it was a penetrating request that had come from one of Harley's customers for details that Celotex did not wish to make public?
I didn't read it like that, no. I'd had emails from other contractors asking for information, data, and again, I'd sent those to the product management team in the past, so it wasn't a strange thing to receive.
It's right, isn't it, that answering these questions fully and honestly would expose the very limited basis on which RS 5000 could actually be used compliantly above 18 metres?
I mean, looking at that now and understanding it now, I would say yes.
Why didn't you understand it that way at the time?
I don't think I fully understood the whole way that the system worked, or the testing regime worked, and how it was interpreted. Well,
you must have understood, surely, given what you knew about the build-up and the caveat in the marketing literature which related to the build-up, that by answering all of these detailed questions, that would give Celotex the headache because it would expose the fact that the use of RS 5000, to which it could be put above 18 metres in compliance with the building regulations, was extremely limited. No?
I suppose yes.
And that must have occurred to you at the time, given what you knew at the time. No?
I can't be certain.
No, I'm not asking you to be certain, but I'm asking you to accept what I'm putting to you as really obvious.
Yes.
And that it actually occurred to you at the time. And then if you look at the last paragraph, he asks about BS 476, penultimate paragraph, and then says in the last paragraph, we are hoping to put this forward on most of the cladding jobs, so having this information to hand would be most useful. Now, again, your quotation in paragraph 70 of your witness statement has omitted that part of Mr. Anketel Jones's email. Why was that?
I don't know.
Was it because you knew at the time that this was a serious problem and that if this data was made public, it would make your job in selling RS 5000 all the harder? And you didn't want to draw attention to it?
Well, no, because I didn't know what Celotex would, or what documents that they would release.
Now, Mr. Anketel Jones told us that this request that he was making of you was not in relation to the Grenfell Tower project. Did you understand it that way?
As far as I could see there was no reference to Grenfell Tower in this email.
No. Did you not wonder why Mr. Anketel Jones had not asked you those questions in relation to the Grenfell Tower project itself?
I didn't know.
Why is that?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Did you think it was unusual that Mr. Anketel Jones was expressing his customers or potential customers' desire for these detailed matters?
Sorry, could you pose that question again?
Did you think that it was unusual that Mr. Anketel Jones was asking these questions?
I didn't think it's unusual, no.
Had you been asked these sorts of questions before the middle of January 2015 by any other cladding subcontractor, main contractor, or other kind of customer?
I can't be sure.
Was this the first time, to the best of your recollection, that somebody had actually asked for these detailed matters, these detailed questions in relation to the building up of what the actual system tested was?
I can't be sure, I'm afraid.
Nonetheless, when this request came through, did it not go through your mind as to why it was that Anketel Jones was not asking the same questions in relation to the Grenfell Tower project?
No, it didn't.
I mean, they're good questions, aren't they?
Yeah.
And did you not think that Mr. Anketel Jones was somehow labouring under a misapprehension or an illusion about RS 5000, given that he was asking these questions for a non-Grenfell Tower customer, but had not actually asked the questions in relation to Grenfell Tower itself?
No, I think he was, being asked by a specialist, a consultant, about the documents, and he was. I don't understand why he had not asked these before for Grenfell.
No, and did it not occur to you that one of the reasons why he hadn't asked these questions was because that he wasn't a specialist?
It didn't cross my mind, no.
Or alternatively, that although he knew that one of his customers wanted to know these details, he didn't want to know it, and his customer didn't want to know it in relation to the Grenfell Tower project. Did that not cross your mind?
It didn't, no.
Did you think about it at all?
I can't say I did, no.
Now, you say at paragraph 71 of your witness statement, as we've seen, that you forwarded this to Jamie Hayes, who was Celotex's technical services team leader. If we go to CEL 50453, we can look at the email halfway down the page. And it says, "Hi, Jamie." You say to him, and this is 19th of January 2015, do we have the test results for RS 5000 for the BS 476 Part 7 fire class rating, as Dan mentions below? I can always go and visit Dan to discuss the BS 8414 Part 2 test results in person. Why would you need to go to see him to discuss those results in person?
I think this is in relation to going back to one of your questions yesterday about the release of documents, and the word I was looking for is confidential documents within Celotex, that if Celotex weren't to provide sort of a document that would be sent by email, then I could, if I was allowed, take a document directly to Dan in person, as a suggestion, that was.
Leave aside the question of the confidentiality of the test results. It's clear from this email that you thought that it might be necessary to go and have a detailed conversation with Daniel Anketell-Jones about the BS8414 test. Is that right?
That's correct from this, yes.
And what were you contemplating you would tell him about the test if you did go and visit him and have that discussion?
I don't know what questions were going to be posed, so it would be me showing him the document for him to review himself and answer any questions that he or his specialist consultant would have had.
Right. And that would have revealed, that conversation, had you had it, would have revealed the very limited basis on which RS5000 could safely be used above 18 metres, compliant with the building regulations and approved document B, no?
It would have done, yes.
Yeah. Therefore, it's unlikely, isn't it, that it's a conversation you would have wanted to have with Daniel Anketell-Jones?
No, I would have had that conversation with him, yes.
And I suggested it's unlikely that you would have wanted to do that because it would have revealed to Mr. Anketell-Jones, a potentially useful customer, that RS5000 was not actually a material you could market very widely.
It's difficult to say because it was a new product and it was in development, I suppose. So that particular test would probably have not helped, no.
No. I take it you didn't go and visit Dan and discuss the 8414 tests?
I didn't, no.
Why is that?
I think later up the email it will explain that those documents would not be released.
You're right, and you know the documents well. Let's go to that. Can we please go to the top of page 1? This is the email back to you on the 19th of January 2015, same day, an hour and a half or so later. Hi, Jonathan. I'm afraid I do not have access to that document. I imagine that this will be a controlled document and only available through marketing. I'm not sure if there would be a requirement for a non-disclosure agreement, etc. Question. Please speak to Debs in the first instance, and she's copied, of course. And if necessary, she will have a chat with Paul. Paul Evans would have been, sorry, that would have been Paul Evans, wouldn't it?
That's correct,
Paul
yes.
There. And Debs is clearly Debbie Berger. Do you know what happened to this discussion, whether it went further than this after the 19th of January 2015?
I can only recall that nothing happened, but I wasn't released any documents to send across. I think the only thing that I had was I think it was the 12-page document that we looked at yesterday.
Let's go back to CEL 50119, please. And go to page 2 within that. CEL 50119. That is a wrong reference. Let's go. Sorry. 6 zeros. 19. CEL 6019. Yes, thank you. Now, you can see from the bottom of page 1 that Mr. Anketell-Jones, comes back to you on the 20th of January, subject re RS 5000. Morning, John, and then over the page at page 2, he says to you, Fingers crossed you can get this for us. I'm worried that if this can't be cleared up, then we will have to change to rock wool duo slab, as this has the necessary backup to appease the specialists. When you got that email, what did you understand Mr. Anketel meant by the necessary backup?
I can only think that it was information that people like fire specialists were requesting.
What was that?
I suppose test data that had been used to bring the product into the marketplace.
Were you concerned that RS 5000 might not have that?
No.
Were you concerned that your customer on a project, or potential customer on a project, and indeed other projects, including Grenfell Tower, would go elsewhere in the absence of the backup that Mr. Anketel-Jones was after?
I expect that was what could be deemed from that statement, yes.
Mm. And who were the specialists, in quotation marks, that he meant, did you think? What was your understanding about what he meant there?
It could be anyone in an advisory capacity, like a fire specialist or a structural specialist, I suppose. Someone who's been employed on a project as a consultant.
Did you work out from that the questions that had been posed to you in his headache email, which we can see lower down the page of the 16th of January 2015, would have originated with a specialist, and that the reason they hadn't been asked on the Grenfell Tower project is because on that project there was no specialist?
I didn't know there was no specialist involved.
It didn't occur to you that these questions had originated from specialists, and that explained why there wasn't any such set of questions being posed to you in relation to the Grenfell Tower project itself?
No.
Why didn't you just level with him at that stage and tell him that, backup or no backup, he simply couldn't use RS 5000 on any of his projects unless the cladding systems were, in each case, exactly as tested by Celotex under the 8414 test that had been passed in May 2014?
I don't know.
Given these questions that were being posed, surely you realised at that time, if not earlier, that Daniel Anketel-Jones hadn't read the caveat in the literature, or else had done and either hadn't understood it or was proposing to ignore it. That must be right, surely.
I didn't take that view, no.
If he had read the caveat in the marketing literature, and we've been through that a number of times, he couldn't possibly have asked these questions, could he?
Possibly not, no.
And therefore, I'm putting to you that you must have realised that either he hadn't read the caveat, hadn't understood the caveat, or was proposing to ignore the caveat.
I couldn't answer that, no.
Well, is there any other explanation for these questions?
No.
But it didn't occur to you at the time?
It didn't, no.
If we look at your response to the Dan email, the fingers crossed email, at the bottom of page 1 of this email chain, please, you send him, this is the top of page 1 now, on the 21st of January 2015, the 12-page BS 8414 report showing the build-up and components used. Can you see that?
I can, yes.
And you say, in addition, I'm sending you the thermocouple graphs showing the temperatures at each level of the test. And you say, I'm not able to send you the BS 476 test document as this is confidential. I'd be surprised if you were able to get this or any other report from the manufacturer, to be honest. In lieu of this, I've attached the data sheet showing the confirmation of the products having a BS 476 Part 6 and 7, which gives it Class 0 performance, in addition to the BS 8414 test. I would ask that these documents are not shared outside of the network of you and your specialist advisor for this project. Give me a call when you have a moment to discuss. Now, before you sent this, did you have or had you had any discussion internally within Celotex about what you should send Daniel Anketel-Jones in response to his request?
I think I must have done, yes.
Do you know who that was with?
I suppose the only parties that would have been able to give me any sort of response would have been, I suppose, Jamie Hayes, who was the first email recipient, and it may have been someone like Debbie Berger or Paul Evans. I can't be sure.
Now, we could see that you sent him the 12-page document. That's the first time you've sent him that, because as we saw yesterday, you only sent him the 4-page filleted version at the end of August 2014, didn't you?
Yes.
Do we take it that it wasn't until January 2015, some 4 months later, that you got round to sending him the 12-page document, and only when he asked?
I think this must have been the case. I can't recall sending him the 12-page before that, no.
Right. And even though you're sending him the 12-page classification report, why didn't you send him the full 32-page or 33-page BS8414 test report itself?
That wasn't made available to myself or anyone else within the sales team, and I think it was deemed confidential.
Right. If we go to that, that's at CEL 401109. That's the 1st of August 2014, issue 1 of the actual BRE Global Test Report, report number 295369. You see that?
I do.
Had you seen that document at this time, to January 2015, yourself?
Never, no.
You say never. Did you never see it during your time
No.
at Celotex?
No.
I see. Then there's probably only a limited amount I can ask you about it. But can we look at page 29? This is a figure 819, which is a photograph showing the condition of the cladding system post-test insulation layer. Is that a photograph that you'd ever seen before?
No, I think this is, from what we know now, was the first test that failed. But it's not a document that I'd ever seen.
Well, you say, from what you know now, was the first test that failed.
Just by looking at the first page.
Where did you get... By looking at the first what?
If you look at the first page of that document,
Yes. Well,
I'm just surmising, because it says there issue 1, and on the 4-page and the 12-page documents that we were sending out, it said issue 2. So I can only surmise that this must have been the report from the first failed test. I might be wrong.
You are wrong.
Am I? Okay.
You are wrong about that. And the surmise you've made is wrong, because issue 2 happened only because there was an error, essentially a typographical error, in issue 1 of the classification report of 12 pages.
Okay, apologies.
So my question again then, coming back to page 29, this is a photograph showing the rig after the May 2014 test, after the test. Is that a photograph you've ever seen before?
It's not, no.
Right, I see. Can we then go to CEL 6023, please? Now, this is Mr. Anketel-Jones's response to your email. It's at the foot of page 1. Morning, John, he says. Thanks for this. Sorry I didn't call back yesterday. Didn't finish till 6. I will look through it and try and give you a call back. Did you leave a message the day before to call you?
I must have done, looking at the text there, yes.
Were you very keen to speak to him?
I think, well, it was just courtesy that I followed it up with a conversation, yes.
We can then see from the top of the page, you respond to him about an hour later on the same day, 21st of January 2015, and you say, give me a call whenever you have a moment. Did you have a conversation, did you think?
I can't recall, no.
Can we go look at CEL 403628, please? And this is later in the year, April 2015, and it's an email from you to Mr. Anketel-Jones on the 8th of April that year. attaching the BCA guidance note entitled Technical Guidance Note 18, Issue 0, June 2014, and we've seen that, I think, before. And you start by thanking him for his time today. You say, "Hi Dan, thanks for your time today to get an update on projects and family." And then in the third line, you say, "I have attached the building control guidance notes for insulation products above 18 metres, which seem to be doing the rounds at the moment. If you do find you're entering into conversations regarding this subject, please let me know what is being said and by whom." Do you recall the conversation on the 8th of April 2015 particularly?
I don't know, but like everything, I often wrote down notes to refresh my memory.
Are there any notes of that conversation that you've seen?
No, only what we can see there.
Right. So can we take it that this email followed a conversation between you and Mr. Anketell-Jones, of which there is no other note?
I should imagine so, unless there's a reference that I made in the database to elaborate on that conversation.
Right. Did you discuss Grenfell Tower, do you think, during that discussion? Or was it more general?
I can't be sure.
It looks as if you might have discussed Premier House, because that's referred to in the second line, but
Yes.
you can't recall.
No.
Now, at this point, just for your information, Harley had already ordered and been invoiced for a quantity of RS 5000 for Grenfell Tower in mid-March. You say here that the BCA technical guidance note was doing the rounds. What did you mean, doing the rounds?
I think this was a document which a lot of installers, or I don't know if specialists, but a lot of people in that industry had been referring to or mentioning.
When did you first see it?
I can't be sure.
When you saw it, did you read it thoroughly?
I read through it. I can't say I read through it thoroughly, but I definitely referred to it, yes.
Is there anything in it which concerned you, do you remember?
I don't think so, no.
Would you not have expected Harley to be aware of it, being a specialist cladding subcontractor in the industry?
Yes, I would have thought so, yes.
Why were you sending it to him then?
Because I think Dan hadn't seen it, so I think when we spoke, he may have asked me to send it to him.
Did it surprise you that he hadn't seen it, as you say?
I suppose it was a document that I would have thought he would have seen, being in the industry. So I suppose,
Yeah.
Yes would be the answer.
Yes.
Simple answer.
Well, yes. I mean, do you recall being surprised that being a specialist or being involved with a specialist subcontractor in the cladding industry, he hadn't seen it?
I suppose yes is the answer.
Yes. And did that not alert you to the fact that whatever other skills and expertise Daniel Anketell-Jones had, it wasn't in relation to cladding?
It didn't. No, it didn't cross my mind.
And that he didn't have specialist consultant or sub-consultant assistants?
It didn't cross my mind, no.
You go on to say, as you do at the end there, if you do find that you're entering into conversations regarding this subject, please let me know what is being said and by whom. This subject, what was that?
I think it was going back to my sort of gleaning information from the industry to pass up the chain of command, as it were, to look at what was being said by which specialists, and that could be fed back to the management team to look at maybe contacting someone or consulting with someone to help with the further development or further testing of the product.
Were you keen to keep your finger on the pulse because you needed to make sure precisely how variable the cladding systems were into which RS 5000 was being sold?
I think it was more that I wanted to be, as you say, understand the processes, understand the systems, because if then I could feed that back to the management teams, then they could look at further testing.
Right. Thank you. You having received or seen the BCA, Building Control Alliance Technical Guidance Note at this point, you could see that it set out, and I don't need to take you back to it, I don't think, unless you want to see it, but it set out 3 routes to compliance, either limited combustibility or what's been called the linear route, a full-scale test under BS 8414, or a desktop.
A desktop study, yes.
Desktop study. At this point, 8th of April 2015, which route to compliance did you think Grenfell Tower was following?
I would have thought it would have followed the third route to compliance there.
You say you would have thought. Did you think?
I can't say.
Again, we've covered this morning, but you hadn't seen a desktop study for RS 5000.
Not internally at Celotex, no.
And you hadn't seen one from Harley?
No, I hadn't.
And to your knowledge, did one exist at all?
Not at that time, no.
So how could it be a route to compliance?
The option was there, but I didn't see any backup, any evidence.
No. So how could it be a route to compliance in your mind?
On reflection, it couldn't be.
No. I'd like to turn to your relationship, Celotex's relationship with the BRE. Can we go to BRE 403742, please? This is an email, and I'd like to look at the second email down on that page first. It's an email from you to Sarah Colwell of the 15th of October 2014. And you say, "Hi Sarah, it was lovely to finally meet you at the CWCT conference last week. I would like to take you up on your offer of a copy of the BR135 document, as the one that I've managed to find in the office is a little too well thumbed. I would also like to be able to read back through your presentation if you're able to send me a copy. I attempted to scribble down a number of notes during your presentation, but being able to read back through the pages I feel would be beneficial. I think the conference showed that there is still a great deal of uncertainty over the choice of materials for a facade build-up, and I myself, and I'm sure everyone, is eagerly awaiting the final publication of the guidance documents. If and when I am up in your neck of the woods, I will make a point of giving you a call for a coffee and a catch-up if you're free." Now, just pausing there, we can see she responds to you not much later in that afternoon on the 15th of October 2014. But I just want to ask you about your email. You say it was lovely to finally meet you. Was that at the CWCT conference earlier in October that we discussed earlier? In your
I think it was, yes.
Had you corresponded with her before this email to her?
I don't think so, no.
So is it right that you therefore simply knew her through her work and her presentation?
I think that's correct, yes.
Right. Did you know her by reputation?
No, it was literally just her name was on the document, I think, or I later found that she was the co-author of the BR135.
Yes. And you say you'll make a point of giving her a call for coffee and a catch-up if she's free. Was Celotex trying to cultivate the BRE?
No, it was just like I said before, it was just trying to glean information that would help Celotex, or whether it's from me or from others, that I could put people in touch with Celotex to better instruct them as to how to better develop that product or test that product.
What information were you trying to glean from her?
I don't know. Any information that would help Celotex, really. Nothing specific.
I'm so sorry. What sort of information did you think at the time would help Celotex that the BRE could give you?
I suppose a guidance to the systems that were often tested, maybe.
Were you looking to find out whether there was any room for manoeuvre in relation to your 8414 test that you had done, so that you could, for example, sell it into systems using different components?
No, because I was not involved in the testing or development or release of that product.
In the penultimate paragraph, as I've shown you, you refer to a great deal of uncertainty over the choice of materials for a facade build-up. What were you referring to there? What was that uncertainty?
I think it was the choice of the materials that would be used in future tests. I think that was the information I was looking for.
You say uncertainty in relation to material for future tests. Is that right? Or did you mean there was uncertainty about what materials you could choose to use in a cladding system where RS 5000 had passed an 8414 test?
I can't be certain from what I meant by that text there.
But let me try and get at this a different way. When you said uncertainty over the choice of materials for a facade build-up, did you really mean a choice of materials for a successful test under 8414, or did you mean what materials a designer could choose in the light of a BS 8414 test?
I suppose a bit of both, really.
Right. And does that tell us that you, in your own mind, were uncertain about how far you could depart in choosing materials for a facade build-up from the 8414 test that RS 5000 had passed in May 2014?
Possibly, yes.
Can we look at CEL 401036? This is an email we looked at earlier relating to the CWCT seminar, and this was in relation to your contact with Mr. Anketel Jones. We looked at it before. Do you remember? We saw it yesterday.
Yes.
We can see Sarah Colwell's name prominently in bold in the middle of the page. And at the end of the email, or towards the end of the email, before the reference to Chris Lewis, I showed you the sentence that says, as we have nearly all found out, the whole issue around BS 8414 is far more complex than we first thought. Looking back on what we've now looked at between yesterday and today, the whole issue, isn't it? Is this right? Was actually the extent to which a cladding system could depart from the precise components and dimensions of the system as tested.
Yes.
Now, going back, if we can, to the question of the meeting with Sarah Colwell. I think you told us yesterday that there actually was a meeting that you attended with Debbie Berger, which was potentially going to happen with Sarah Colwell, but in fact, in the end, was with Stephen Howard, yes?
That's correct.
And that happened on the 4th of November 2014, I think, didn't it?
I think so, yes.
Can we look at... well, did you fix that meeting after your email exchange with her on the 15th of October, where you offered to come up and have coffee?
I think I must have done, yes.
Let's look and see how this was set up. Can we go to BRE 403744, please? This is an Outlook diary entry, and it looks like it's Debbie Berger's.
I stand corrected, yes. It looks like Debbie was the organiser.
Right, okay. And the start and end was the 4th of November, Tuesday the 4th of November 2014. She says, "Hi Steve, thank you for your call last week. Both Jonathan and I would like to visit you at the BRE to discuss the fire test report BR135. It looks like she spoke to Steve, being Stephen Howard. Do you remember whether she did or not? Or what she said to him or he said to her?
I don't know.
You don't. Can we then look at CEL 402131? This is an email string in mid-October, which I think I need to look at page 2 for to start with. That's the end of it. So it starts with an email from Stephen Howard, and if we go to page 1, we can see that he is writing to her at the foot of page 1, 17th of October 2014, to Debbie Berger and John Roper. So now you didn't see this email, but until it was copied to you a few days later. But she says, or he says to her, "We had a conversation a while ago regarding the content of the classification reports and the level of technical detail they contained. We need to put a lot of info in, but you don't want your competitors to see it. We have come up with a way of doing it. So if this is of interest, can you remind me of what you were hoping to achieve? Sorry, it's been a while, and I will see if we can do it. And then that email goes to you, because Debbie Berger forwards it to you on the 20th of October, as you can see from the top of the page. Yes? And she says, "Hi, I'm going to set up a meeting with Steve Howard early next week to talk about how to detail our BRE RS5000 fire report so as it gives us the relevant commercial info without the sensitive stuff. He's got some ideas that could help us. Would you like to come to this meeting? I would value your input. If so, will you give me access to your diary so I can schedule a meeting?" Was that the meeting that took place? It seems as if it was.
It must have been, yes.
Yeah. Now, there's no reference to this meeting at all in your witness statement. Can you explain why that is?
No, I don't.
Had you forgotten about it?
No, I remember the meeting. I don't know why I didn't put it into the notes.
Right. Now, Sarah Colwell, I think you told us earlier, wasn't there, but Stephen Howard was. Do you know whether there is a note of the meeting?
I don't know, unless it's in the Salesforce system.
Right.
For myself, notes for myself.
I follow. So you would take a note of that meeting by putting your takeaway, if you like, from it into the Salesforce database.
Or maybe a return email to Debbie.
Right.
Yes.
Do you remember sitting at the meeting whether anyone took notes, whether Debbie or Stephen Howard?
I don't know.
Did you yourself take notes?
I might have done at the time, yes, to refresh my memory afterwards.
Right. Where would you have kept those notes, do you think?
Just in an A4 lined folder, I think, or a book.
Right. Do you remember taking notes of this meeting?
I don't know.
Right. Can we go to CEL 401034, please? This is an Outlook diary entry by Debbie Berger for the same meeting, created, I think, on the 20th of October 2014. And you can see underneath it the same text that I showed you before. And then underneath that it says, "Notes to discuss engineering judgments." You see, and it says, "Use of RS5000 with CLT and timber frame. Identify breadth of parameters for RS5000 use with cladding types, insulation thickness, helping hand systems, sheathing boards." Was that the subject of the meeting, that discussion, those topics?
I think it's likely if that's what was written there, yes.
What did you understand by the breadth of parameters for RS5000 use?
I suppose with looking at this, it was trying to remember, it was looking at further testing and relevant build-ups that could be used in further tests and the scope at which those could be interpreted.
Right. Do you remember whether those matters were discussed at the meeting?
I can't be sure.
And by breadth of parameters, you've told us further testing and relevant build-ups that could be used in further tests, and the scope at which those could be interpreted. So does that include how far or with what variety of cladding systems you could use RS5000 and still be within the parameters of the 8414 test that had been done?
I think it was based upon desktop studies.
Right. Was what Celotex was after by this meeting from the BRE some kind of indication of how wide the range of different cladding systems RS5000 could be used with?
Yes.
Thank you. Can I then move to a slightly different topic, which is a short one document, in fact, CEL 401069, and your month-end report from February 2015. Can we go, please, in that document to page 9? And this is market intelligence, a slide for market intelligence. Just to, before I ask any more questions about this document, what was the purpose of this document?
I think each month we put in information about the projects that we were working on, and also any sort of feedback from the market about competitors, anything that would be of relevance to the company, I suppose, and the products that we were selling.
And who did you send this document to at this time, February 2015? Would it be Debbie Berger?
I'm not sure who was on the round, Rob. It's likely to be the Southern sales manager and team.
Right.
I think. I don't know if maybe senior management might have been copied in as well.
I see. It says under market intelligence, rumours that NHBC are in the final stages of issuing a statement that they will no longer offer their warranties on buildings above 18 metres using either a phenolic or PIR foam insulation in a facade application unless specifically tested in the build-up being used. Do you know whether NHBC ever did issue such a statement?
No, I can't recall.
What effect did that rumour have on your efforts to sell RS5000 to potential customers?
It didn't change anything.
And is that because the caveat, unless specifically tested in the build-up being used, was the same as the caveat you had set out in your marketing literature, as we've seen?
I suppose so. From Celotex's point of view, yes.
And does that tell us, and tell me if this is wrong, that from your own experience, before NHBC were considering issuing this statement, if that is indeed the case according to the rumours, they would have accepted and offered warranties on buildings above 18 metres with PIR foam insulation in a facade application, even though it wasn't specifically tested in the build-up being used?
I couldn't tell you that. That was just feedback that someone had given me.
Do we get from this that the NHBC were rather behind the curve and that they were prepared to give warranties in respect of the use of RS5000 above 18 metres, even though not specifically tested in the build-up being used?
I can't be sure, but this was to do with any foam board, as it were.
Oh, you say any foam board, quite possibly, but not any foam board above 18 metres?
No.
No. Can we then turn to your June 2015 draft email that you cover at paragraph 60 of your witness statement? Let's just go to the email. It's CEL 401126. And this is a draft email. And you send this email on the 18th of June 2015 to Richard, John, Rob Warren, Debbie Berger. Subject, RS5000 18+ statement. John O. Rob, please can you review my generic response to those parties that are awaiting a response on the use of RS5000 on facades above 18 metres in height on NHBC projects. Dear X, and I'll read it all to you. We are currently benchmarking our RS5000 BS8414 Part 2 test data with the NHBC and have submitted a number of our own desktop studies to them for comment. Until this process has been completed, we will have to postpone any further testing or desktop studies until the initial process has been completed with the NHBC. So as not to delay your projects at the critical design and build stages, Celotex will have to ask you to explore other avenues for insulation products to be used specifically in facades that are over 18 metres in height, insured by the NHBC. I can only offer my apologies at this time, as I thought that the process would be far more advanced by this stage. I will, of course, inform you as soon as I have more positive news. Now, at paragraph 61 of your witness statement, and there's no need to see it, you were told not to send this email, weren't you?
That's correct, yes.
Who told you not to send it?
It must have been one of the people that were copied in on that or sent to in that email.
Right. And let's go to CEL 402042, please. And I'd like to go within that email run to page 4. And here we have an email from Rob Warren to you in response. And he says, "Hi, Jonathan, I would not be comfortable for this to go out to our customers in this form." You see that?
I do.
And he goes on, "I suggest you wait till Monday when Paul Evans returns from holiday, rather than risk potentially sending out a message that may not be in line with our communication strategy on RS5000. As we discussed on the phone, I believe that we should look to potentially allowing some customers to request desktop studies. However, this would depend upon the kind of systems they're proposing to use. Therefore, ahead of a discussion with Paul, perhaps you could summarise a list of customers who are chasing us along with the proposed build-ups. This may allow us to give the green light to proceed on those projects where we feel there is a better chance of a successful conclusion to the desktop study, and be able to respond in some cases with a more positive message, etc. I've copied Paul in so he's aware of the situation prior to his return from holiday next week. Thanks for including me in the discussion. I hope my contribution has been useful. If not, feel free to use colourful language at the screen and start making an effigy with no hair." Now, in an email further up the chain, at the bottom of page 3, we can then see Miss Berger's response. She follows up, and she says in the second paragraph, "We're working with NHBC to better understand their concerns with RS5000 and its use on their projects. And although you may be correct with the details, Jonathan, this is very much work in progress with them until we come to an agreement, and therefore not, in capitals, the message to go into the market. Once we have come to an agreement, then I agree with Rob, we can get together when Paul is back to decide a strategy and message for NHBC projects. I know you gave me a list of projects before our meeting with NHBC, but an updated one, as Rob suggests, would be a useful something." And then we can see Richard John's response above that. But just pausing there, at this stage, what did you understand, in a nutshell, the reasons you were being told not to send the email out were?
Probably from a commercial reason, that it was the wrong statement to be made on behalf of the company at that time, or they didn't want that to be issued in that form.
Right. Were there any desktop studies then available that you'd seen? This is mid-June 2015.
Yes, I think this was very close to the end of my tenure within the company. I have a feeling there was 2 that we were doing for the Barclay Group at one point.
Right. Now, we can then see Richard John's response. If we go over the page, or up the page to page 2, and it's quite long. I just pick it up, I think, at the third paragraph. "JR has been promoting RS5000 since we went to market, and with big players like Barclay Group and Barratt London, the pressure for answers is immense. However, as both Rob and Debbie have pointed out, we have to be very careful with any wording that may leave us in a vulnerable position, or worse still, open to legal exploitation." And then he says, "My suggestion is as follows. Continue to communicate by word of mouth, as you did with Jordan today, with honesty and openness. As you agreed earlier, this will uphold our integrity during this process. Agree as soonest date possible for an internal RS5000 review meeting to include all persons on this email, plus Sir Chris Nichols." And then it goes on over the page. "In preparation for this meeting, JR and I will compile a full list of parties, as Rob suggested, with as much technical information as possible. And perhaps product management can compile all up-to-date NHBC information." And then he talks about the meeting. We should agree on our next course of action to protect our brand and product, but also help retail JR's name and integrity. Just that last point there, help retail JR's name and integrity. Who was the JR there? Was that you?
I think it might have been, yes.
Right. Was there a sense that your integrity in selling RS5000 was being undermined?
I don't know. I don't know what he meant by that.
Right. Why would being open about the difficulties that you're encountering with NHBC leave Celotex open to legal exploitation?
can't tell you that.
This is what Mr. John's views were. Who is Sir Chris Nichols?
I think that's just a flippancy, but Chris Nichols, if you look back at the organogram, was one of the...
It's the same. I see. I was wondering
Yeah.
whether the accolade meant that it was somebody else. But it's a piece of sarcasm, is it?
It is, yes.
I see. Now, we know that you resigned from Celotex very shortly after this.
Correct, yes.
Why was that?
I was offered a new position in a new company, quite an exciting position, and I felt that the lack of progress with investment behind the products like RS5000 weren't making my role any easier. So I decided to take on this new position.
The new position, was it one that you applied for or you were headhunted for?
I think I was headhunted for, yeah.
Right. When you resigned, did you give your line manager and those more senior to them, him or her, the reasons for your resignation?
I did, yes.
What were those?
I think it was quite clear from my frustration from that email text that I'd written that the company didn't seem to be sort of moving forward with further testing to help my and my colleagues' roles in promoting this type of product.
At the time you left Celotex, what was your impression of how Celotex were going to continue successfully to market RS5000 without any further tests?
Well, my personal impression would it would have been quite difficult. They were doing a few desktop studies, but I couldn't see that it was going to be particularly easy with the questions that were being asked and that I was passing up the chain of command for them to address.
Thank you very much. Well, Mr. Roome, I'm sorry it's taken me rather longer to get to the end of my questions than I had first planned, but I'm grateful to you. Mr. Chairman, those are my questions for the time being. There is one reference I fear I need to check anyway, but it's best if we also give those who are not in this room a little time to gather their questions for
Yes, of
me,
course.
if there are any.
Well, now, Mr. Roome, at this point we have to have a short break because there are other people not in the room who may want to raise matters or suggest further questions to counsel, or counsel may find that he's left some questions out. So we're going to have a short break. Is 10 minutes enough, Mr. Minute?
It might be a little bit short because I anticipate what will happen if I say 10 minutes is that I'll get an email from those outside the room complaining that it's too short.
Well, it would be a good thing to complete Mr. Roome before we break for lunch.
It would.
I'm sure that's what he would like.
It would.
So, all right, well, we'll say 15 then.
If we say 15 and we'll cut our cloth.
We'll come back at 5 to 1. There may well be a few questions, but I think we can be reasonably confident of getting you away quite soon after 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Anyway. So, if you'd like to go with the usher now, and please remember not to talk to anyone about your evidence while you're out of the room. Right, 5 to 1 then, Mr. Miller. Thank you. Yes, would you ask Mr. Roome to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Roome, we'll see if there are any more questions for you.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Millett?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The references I wanted to check are in fact the same references that others wanted me to go to. So I think there's a happy confluence, which won't take long. Can I ask Mr. Roome, can you please be shown CEL 401259 first of all? This is about the 4th of November 2014 meeting that you had with Debbie Berger and Stephen Howard at the BRE. And I'll show you these two emails. This is, at the bottom of page 1, your email, dated the 5th of November 2014, to Debbie Berger. Subject, BRE meeting, RS 5000 notes and follow-up, BBA, importance high. And you say, "Hi Debs, here is my understanding and follow-up tasks following our meeting with Stephen Howard at the BRE and conversations since." And then in bold, you say, "RS 5000 needs further system testing. We need advice on standard applications, i.e. cladding tile types, JR to review those that have A2 rating and BBA certificates." You see that?
I do, yes.
Was the JR you,
It would have been, yes, I think so.
as opposed to John Roper?
Yes.
And did you actually review those cladding tiles that had A2 rating and BBA certificates as a result of this discussion?
I didn't know.
And if we turn over the next page, you can see that you say there, in the second bullet point down, underlined, further testing will offer better base data for clients designing rain screens. So was that the point, that you needed further testing so that you could have a better base data?
I think this is what the advice had been given to Celotex about, further options for the testing.
Right. And then underneath that it says, BRE, Stephen Howard would like to meet with a facade consultant to better understand the decision-making process when designing a rain screen facade. JR to put forward Andrew Jones, Total Facade Solutions, as a potential advisor. First question, did you actually in the end ever put forward Andrew Jones as a potential advisor to the BRE?
I can't recall, but I think I may have sent the details of Andrew Jones to Stephen Howard.
Right. Did you understand why Stephen Howard needed to understand better the decision-making process when designing a rain screen facade?
No, I don't.
You don't. We then go, please, to CEL. Well, actually, can we go up the page to page 1 again, please, and look at the top of page 1? We can see that Debbie Berger responds to you the next day on the 6th of November 2014 and says, "Hi, Jonathan, attached is a short summary I've just put together in conjunction with the email you sent. Feel free to add or amend. Once returned, I will keep it as a guide for us and also show Paul Evans." I've not really discussed anything with him yet. I was waiting for us to get our heads together and come up with the plan. And if you go to CEL 401260, please, we can see her short summary that she'd attached to that email. And it's entitled RS 5000 Summary. It's a one-page document. Market, growing uncertainty, technical application. First bullet point, emotional. Just on that, what do you think she meant by that when you saw this document?
I've got no idea, I'm afraid.
Life safety, I think that's clear. And then BRE, BBA, NHBC approvals, sensitive to insulation being about sales. What did you understand that referred to?
Again, I'm not sure.
Did it express a concern coming from Stephen Howard of the BRE that the BRE's approval, so far as he was aware, was concerned, was sensitive to insulation being about sales?
I can't recall, I'm afraid.
Does it tell us, or did you get the sense from the meeting, perhaps, that these bodies, these approvals bodies, were alive to the fact that manufacturers of insulation were about sales?
I can't recall that, no.
And then in the last bullet point, she says, or records, burnt by K15 approvals in the past. What was that a reference to?
Again, I'm not sure.
Was there any discussion at the meeting with the BRE about K15?
Possibly, yes.
In what context?
Just in relation to Celotex, I suppose, with regards to the RS5000 and to maybe further testing. That's the only thing I can think.
Did you get the sense that Mr. Howard was in some sense disenchanted by K15 getting approvals?
I couldn't say.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Roome. I have no further questions for you. And Mr. Chairman, I've come to the end of my questions. Mr. Roome, it remains only for me to thank you very much for coming to the inquiry and assisting us with our investigations. We're extremely grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, well, I'd add my own thanks on behalf of the panel, Mr. Roome. I know it's taken quite a long time for you to answer all the questions we had for you, and I'm sorry we've taken up quite so much of your time, but we are very grateful to you for coming to give us your evidence. And now you're free to go.
Thank you, sir.
Very much. Well, that is a convenient point at which
I was going to ask you whether it was. Yes.
Yes,
Good.
I would
Thank
say
you.
so. So we'll stop now and we'll resume at 2:05. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. 2:05.